You have to be a pervert, extremely sadistic, very wicked to inflict torments of this magnitude, torture and treatment, and inhuman treatment, as unspeakable as those inflicted on the Son of Man, born of a father of house of David, two biological parents like us, like you and me in all things according to Hebrews 2:14, having fully partaken of the flesh according to Hebrews chapter 2 verse 14, having been tempted in all things like us, but not succumbing, in accordance with Hebrews chapter 4 verse 15, knowing that James chapter 1 verse 13 informs us, reveals us. Then if he had been the Son of God or God on the first day of his birth in Bethlehem, couldn't have been tempted. James 1:13 clearly states that God cannot be tempted. He who was tempted, he who could be tempted, he's the Son of Man, made of flesh and bone like yourself, as witnessed by Luke chapter 24:39, where it is written, see my hands, see my feet, touch them, come near, touch them, feel them, see them as they are, test them. For a spirit has no flesh, as I have. Luke 24:39. Hebrews 5:7 testifies that the Messiah suffered much in the days of his flesh. If among men to be a man with men, and to suffer with men and for men had not been an absolute imperative. God, who is neither perverse nor sadistic nor wicked, would never, ever allowed for the true Christ to come down to earth to undergo all these torments, inhuman and cruel treatment, untold torture inflicted on him. If it hadn't been essential, if it hadn't been an absolute necessity to be a human being among men in order to be able to save them, God would have been content to save mankind from a distance. Isn't he sovereign and all-powerful? Since God is almighty, if the sufferings of the cross until death were not indispensable, then he could have saved the human being without needing anyone on earth. Is he not sovereign and all-powerful? Then he could have contented himself with the sovereign blood of animals, which was already offered under the Mosaic system. But that's not what Hebrews 9:1-15 tells us. It's not what Hebrews 10:10-19 tells us. Hebrews 10:10 says that we are saved through the offering of his body and flesh. And he himself says so in John chapter 6, verses 51-53. You can't be saved, I can't be saved if I don't eat the flesh of the Son of Man, flesh of the Son of Man. We find the same terminology, flesh, procreation, descent, offspring, fruit of the womb, seed. How do we say it? So that we realize it's time to wake up from the very long Christian night, from the endless parenthesis of the Christian gospel that has rolled mankind in flour. If descending on the land of men, as an authentic Son of Man, with men, among men, to save men had not been an absolute imperative, inescapable, indispensable, then God could have sent someone else, an angel, for example. Is he not sovereign and all-powerful? But if in the end, as John chapter 6, 33-38 says, he himself had to get down here, if he had to, I'll share the flesh equally with us. This is what Hebrews 2:14 says, but this is also what Hebrews 1:9 says, when it says that, O God, your God, has far from you an oil of joy, above your equals, because as a human being, he was neither more than us nor less than us. If he had to come himself, it's because there were no other options on the table. Unfortunately, Christianity, through its preachers, comes to deceive mankind by preaching another Christ. That Yeshua, the Christ of the prophets and apostles, Jesus or Yeshua was a common name everyone could and still can call themselves that. The real Christ himself reveals in Matthew 24:24. There will be multiple Christs written in the plural. It's not exclusive. A mere name won't work. It's like casting a spell when you call upon Jesus, Jesus Christ or the Lord. There are several Lords. It's just that the one I'm talking about is the one the apostles spoke of, the one they preached, the Jesus Christ of biblical prophecy, the Jesus Christ of the foundation of the apostles and prophets in accordance with 2 Ephesians chapter 2, verse 20. Anyone who has believed, even sincerely, even very sincerely, in the Jesus Christ of Christianity is saved? We need to be clear on this issue because the situation is serious. And the hour is grave. Ladies and gentlemen, the hour is grave. Here is the answer given by the true Christ himself. The expression true Christ is not an expression. No, it's from 1 John 5:20. It's from Revelation 3:7, Revelation 19:11, Revelation 3:14, and so on. So when we say true Christ, you must not see in it an aspiration, a tendency to divide, or create sterile polemics. We're talking about eternity, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about the essential. For God's work, contrary to what Christianity tells us, is not all his actions as unilaterally defined by each denomination. God's work is clearly defined in John 6:29. God's work is to know the true Christ, period. I begin again the work of God. It's not something you have to try and define for yourself. God explains to you what his work is. His work is that you should know the true Christ, John 6:29, and for this purpose he has given you understanding to know the true Christ. God's will, it is known. You don't have to look for it. It is written, is peremptory. It is much more than the prophecies of your contemporary prophets. It is much more than the preaching of your current preachers. There's nothing derogatory in what I said. It's just that at some point we have to tell the truth, and the truth is that it is written is at the top of the hierarchy of all norms and sources. And what does John 6:29 say? He tells us God's will. God's will is that you should know the true Christ. The intelligence you have is to know the true Christ, according to 1 John 5:20. For John chapter 17:3 reveals that the true Christ has and is eternal life. And indeed, he himself says it in John 14:6, I am the life. Is a Christian saved? Can the false Christ offer the eternal life he isn't and isn't? Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to go to Beijing, to be a bit serious, don't take a plane to Johannesburg if your will, if your intention is to obtain a visa or a German passport. Don't apply for it in Canada. So if you've boarded the plane of the false Christian Christ, you'll go where he goes, to perdition. And it's not me saying it, it's Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 1 and 2, who says the following: the gospel which I preach to you, by which you are saved, if and only if you keep it as it is. Otherwise, Paul says you would